At my daughter's wedding, she left me in the kitchen with the staff. I overheard her whisper, "Better keep her away so she does not spoil the photographs." I stepped out and placed a receipt on the table. "I covered the entire cost of the wedding. I am grateful to have you here. Follow my story until the very end and share in the comments the city you are watching from so I can see how far my story has traveled." I never imagined that my daughter's wedding day would be the moment I truly grasped my role in her life. Standing quietly in the corner of the grand kitchen at the Bellamy Hotel, I adjusted the silk dress I'd spent weeks selecting, a deep navy adorned with tiny pearls along the collar. It was modest and elegant. I wanted nothing to steal the spotlight from Claire. "Mrs. Thompson, would you prefer some water?" one of the kitchen workers asked, his gaze revealing an emotion I was reluctant to admit. Pity. "No, thank you," I replied, forcing a smile to preserve my composure. I was just catching a short break from all the excitement. That was a lie. I had not chosen to hide away in the kitchen while my only daughter celebrated the most significant day of her life in the ballroom beyond those swinging doors. I was gently but firmly guided here by the wedding planner Claire had hired. "Mrs. Wilson, maybe you would feel more comfortable waiting here until the formal photos are done," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. At first, I did not understand. I thought perhaps they needed to take some. I was told to stay here for special pictures, with only the bridal party, so I agreed and followed her into the kitchen, where the staff was busy preparing the 5-course dinner I had paid for. That was already 3 hours ago. Suddenly, the double doors to the kitchen opened, and I straightened up, hoping it was finally someone coming to bring me back to the celebration. Instead, it was Claire herself, glowing in her designer gown that had cost more than my first house. At first, she didn't notice me because she was focused on instructing the catering manager. "Remember, we need the champagne fountain running before we cut the cake," she said with that commanding tone she had developed over the years. It was so unlike the gentle girl she used to be. As she turned to leave, she finally saw me. A flicker of something, annoyance, appeared on her face before she quickly regained her composure. "Mum, what are you doing here?" she asked, sounding frustrated as if I had come in without permission. "I was told to wait here," I replied quietly, not wanting to cause a scene. "Is it time for family photos?" Claire looked around nervously, then stepped closer and lowered her voice. "About that, we are running late, and Justin's family is quite large. The photographer suggested limiting formal photos to immediate family only." I was confused and blinked. "But I am immediate family, Claire. I am your mother." She let out a sigh while glancing impatiently towards the door. Justin's parents had this entire concept in mind for the album, and his mother believed in it deeply. The kitchen door opened once more, and the photographer's assistant poked her head inside. "Claire, we are ready for the family portraits." Claire nodded swiftly. "Coming?" She glanced back at me with a forced smile. "Just wait here a little longer, Mom. Enjoy some peaceful moments. You understand how overwhelming events like these can be when you are at your age." My age? I was only 68 years old, hardly old. I opened my mouth to object, but she was already making her way to the door. As she approached it, the assistant spoke again. "Is that her?" She indicated me subtly. "The one you mentioned?" Claire interrupted with a quick nod and whispered something I was not supposed to overhear. Yet in the brief quiet of the kitchen, her words reached me perfectly clear. "Yes, that is my mother. It is better to keep her away from the pictures. She does not quite match the look we want here. Just make sure she stays busy in this room." The door closed behind them, but the sting of those words lingered, cutting deeper than any blade ever found in that kitchen. I stood motionless, overwhelmed by the crushing weight of realization. All the months of preparation, the countless checks I had written, the way I dipped into my pension for Claire's dream wedding, none of it mattered. I was simply an inconvenient part of the equation, a financial tool to be used and then hidden away. My hands trembling, I reached into my... I took out my purse and found the last bank statement, the one detailing the transfer of $42,850 to cover the remaining wedding costs. I had intended to quietly show it to Claire later, not to seek gratitude, but simply so she would realize that despite my limited resources, I had managed to provide everything she wished for. Now, that document seemed more like proof of my own naivety. I moved slowly through the kitchen, avoiding the pitying looks of the staff who had certainly overheard everything. Through the service corridor, I made my way to the grand ballroom where crystal chandeliers gleamed above the laughing guests. No one paid attention to me as I quietly approached the gift table. I slipped the bank statement into an envelope, wrote Claire's name on it, and placed it right on top of the neatly wrapped presents. After casting one last glance at my stunning daughter, posing with her new husband and his parents, all smiling for the camera, I turned away and left the hotel, stepping into the cool evening air unnoticed. At last, tears escaped down my cheeks. When I got home, the house was completely silent. No congratulatory flowers, no leftover cake, no sign that my only child had just gotten married. Just emptiness and the ticking of the grandfather clock that had belonged to Claire's father. I took off my shoes, the practical yet stylish navy pumps bought to match my dress, and sat alone in the dark living room, wearing the dress. I had once been so proud that now it felt like a mere costume, something I had worn in a play where I had foolishly misunderstood my part. For 3 weeks following the wedding, I received no contact from Claire. No gratitude, no phone call, not even a message to say they had returned from their honeymoon in Bali, which was also paid for from my savings. The silence stung far more than her words at the ceremony. Each morning I woke hoping to hear from her, to get some explanation, maybe even an apology. Every night, I went to sleep with that hope still unmet. I told myself during the first week that she was busy adjusting to married life. During the second week, I reasoned the honeymoon might have been extended. By the third week, I had run out of reasons. One Tuesday morning, while watering the petunias on my porch, the flowers Claire had always said reminded her of her childhood, my phone finally rang playing her ringtone. My heart jumped, and I almost spilled the watering can in my rush to answer. Claire, I couldn't hide the relief in my voice. "How are you, dear? How was the honeymoon?" "It was fine," she replied, her tone sharp and formal. No further details, no warmth shared. "Mum, we need to talk about what you did at the wedding. The watering can slipped from my hands, splashing water over my slippers." "What I did? The bank statement?" "Mum, you left it on the gift table where everyone could see it." Her voice rose in indignation. "Justin's parents saw it. Do you realize what you did? Do you realize how humiliating that was? They believe I made you cover everything." "But you did," I admitted softly, the words slipping out before I could stop them. "That is not the issue," Claire snapped. "It was meant to be confidential. You embarrassed me on my wedding day." I collapsed onto the porch swing, suddenly drained. "I never wanted to shame you, Claire. I just thought you should have it for your records. You could have mailed it or handed it to me discreetly. Yet, no, you felt the need to make a statement, just like in high school when you arrived at parents' night wearing that dreadful homemade dress, because you refused to borrow money for a decent one." The memory hurt sharply. I had stayed awake for 3 nights straight to sew that dress, wanting to look nice for her school event after her father passed away, and our financial situation worsened. She was so ashamed of me that evening, walking a few steps ahead, acting as if we weren't together, just like at her wedding. "I'm sorry the bank statement hurt you," I said finally, struggling to keep my voice calm. "But I'm also sorry you made me wait in the kitchen during your wedding and told the photographer to exclude me from the photos." A long silence hung between us. "You heard that?" Claire's voice had softened somewhat. "Yes." Another pause. "Well, you must understand, Mom. The photos were very significant to Justin's family. They're going to display them in their summer house, and I don't match the style. She finished speaking, her words from that night still ringing in the air. That is not what I meant, she sighed with a heavy breath. Look, you are making this all about yourself, and it is not, she insisted. It was my wedding day, a wedding day I paid for, I reminded her gently. And now you are throwing that back at me. Her voice rose sharply again. This is exactly why Justin thought it would be better if you were not such a prominent figure. You always feel the need to remind everyone of your sacrifices. My throat tightened painfully. When have I ever done that, Claire? When have I ever asked for anything in return? I asked quietly. It is not what you say, Mom. It is how you act. That martyr expression, those sorrowful eyes as if you are constantly trying to make everyone aware of how much you have given up, she said. Her words struck me like blows to the chest. Is that really how she views me? As some pitiful figure who tries to make others feel guilty. I thought about the second job I had taken up after her father passed away. The night shifts at the hospital, so she could remain in her private school with her friends. The holidays I never allowed myself, the retirement funds I had drained, and all the dreams I had put on hold. Everything was done, so she never had to feel anything was missing. Had it all just made her resent me? I think we both need a little time to calm down, I finally said, my voice barely a whisper. Fine, Claire replied coldly. Justin and I are hosting a small dinner next weekend to share the wedding pictures. His parents will be there. I will let you know if we decide to invite more people. The call ended before I could respond. I sat there alone on my porch, surrounded by flowers that only I seemed to remember as Claire's childhood favorites. That evening, curiosity pushed me towards something I had been avoiding: social media. Claire had always told me to stay off her pages. It is embarrassing when Mum's comment shows up, she used to say, but I needed to see, I needed to understand. And there they were, professional pictures from the wedding, at least 100 of them. Claire and Justin, Claire with his parents, Claire with her bridesmaids, Claire and Justin's extended family, Claire dancing with Justin's father. Not a single picture of me, not one that even hinted I existed. In the album called Our Perfect Day, I was completely erased. As I read through the comments, messages like, "Beautiful family," "You all look so perfect together," stung deeply. A chilling truth settled over me. This had not been a spontaneous choice made at the wedding. It was planned. My daughter had purposely removed me from her story, keeping only the financial support I offered. Feeling crushed, I shut the laptop and moved to my bedroom, opening the closet where I kept all of Claire's childhood keepsakes, report cards, artwork, stories she had written in elementary school, where I was always the hero. One crayon drawing even declared, "My mum is my best friend." When did that change? When did I become an unwanted burden instead of a loved mother? As tears blurred my sight, something caught my eye in the back of the closet. Out of the closet came the dusty suitcase I had not touched in 20 years. Not since Claire's father was alive, and we dreamed about traveling together. For the first time in many years, I started to wonder what would happen if I packed that suitcase. If I went somewhere, anywhere, where I was more than just a forgotten mother. As the days turned into weeks, I found myself reevaluating my relationship with Claire through a fresh, painful perspective. What I uncovered shattered my heart all over again. This was no isolated event. It was a slow developing pattern that I had completely overlooked. One rainy afternoon, I sat at my kitchen table surrounded by photo albums and birthday cards collected over the years. The change was unmistakable, documented in fading pictures and increasingly distant messages. Claire at 16, rolling her eyes as I snapped her photo before prom. Claire at her college graduation, carefully keeping her distance in photos. The birthday cards had transformed from childish "I love you, mommy" notes into generic pre-printed messages signed only by her. Her wedding was merely the climax of years of gradual avoidance. I ran my finger over a photo from Claire's 25th birthday dinner, a celebration I had saved for months to host at the upscale restaurant she adored. In the image, she was seated among her friends while I was pushed to the edge, partially cut out. Even then, she was placing me on the borders of her life. Suddenly, the doorbell rang, pulling me from my thoughts. Looking through the peephole, I caught sight of my neighbor Evelyn's silver hair and warm eyes. Over the years, we had exchanged polite greetings, but never truly connected beyond small talks about gardening over the fence. When I opened the door, she said she had brought cinnamon rolls still warm from the oven. I hesitated, feeling self-conscious about my tear-streaked face and disheveled look, yet the genuine kindness in her eyes softened my resistance. "Come in," I said, stepping aside, though I warned, "I am afraid I won't be good company today." Evelyn placed the pastries on the counter and glanced at the albums spread across my table. "Family memories? More like family illusions," I replied, surprised at the bitterness in my own voice. She simply nodded, not pressing me, just patiently waiting. Something about her quiet presence encouraged me to let the words flow out. I spoke of Claire's wedding, my time isolated in the kitchen, the harsh remarks, and the slow fading of our bond. I revealed everything I was holding inside, finishing almost breaking down. Yet, somehow, it felt like it still wasn't enough. Or perhaps somehow, it was far too much. Evelyn poured tea for both of us from the kettle sitting on my stove. "My Harold used to say love should never shrink you," she said, pushing a mug toward me. "It should create space for you to blossom." I think I made myself smaller to let Claire have more room, I confessed. But instead of valuing that space, she just filled up every corner until no room remained for me. My eyes rested on the scattered remnants of my life around me. A life revolving around a daughter who had carefully pushed me to my limits. "Now I don't recognize myself without her," I murmured. "Maybe it's time to discover who you really are," Evelyn said softly, yet confidently. That night, after Evelyn had left, my phone lit up. Claire's name appeared on the screen. I almost did not answer, dreading another outburst about the bank statement, but some motherly instinct or perhaps just habit made me pick up. "Mom." Claire's voice carried that familiar tone she used when she desired something. "I've been reflecting on what you said." A faint hope stirred in my chest. "Yes, regarding the money for the wedding. I understand you worked tirelessly for it, and I truly appreciate that." For a moment, I let myself believe she had truly changed her attitude. Then she added, "So, I thought since you're so skilled at handling money, maybe you could assist us with the down payment on the house we're looking at. Justin's parents are pitching in, but we're still nearly $40,000 short." The request struck me like a heavy blow after everything. The wedding, the exclusion, the angry call. She was asking for more money. "Claire," I began slowly, "I don't have $40,000. The wedding and honeymoon drained most of my savings. But what about your retirement fund? Or you could get a home equity loan since interest rates are quite favorable right now." I shut my eyes, the painful truth of our relationship becoming crystal clear at last. This was never love, it was a mere exchange. Instead of replying directly, I suggested, "Why not come over for dinner this weekend? We could discuss your housing options in person." Claire hesitated. "This weekend is difficult. We have guests coming for a dinner party featuring the wedding photos." I recalled the one you were uncertain about, so I asked, "Am I even invited?" An uneasy silence followed. "Mom, don't act like that. It's just that Justin's parents are extremely particular, and they have been very generous. We must make a good impression." "More particular than the mother who raised you on her own for 20 years, paid for your college, and covered your entire wedding?" I asked sharply. "That's different," Claire replied, her tone hardening. "You're my mother. You're supposed to do those things." Those words lingered, laying bare everything. To Claire, my sacrifices were not acts of love, but expected duties, to be fulfilled, demanded, then discarded once done. "I have to go," I whispered. "We will talk another time." "But Mom, about the house," she said, ending the call while my hands shook. My eyes drifted across the room toward that dusty suitcase once again. Nearby sat boxes filled with Claire's childhood belongings I had meticulously saved, while my own dreams and keepsakes had long been packed away and forgotten. A strange calm enveloped me. For decades, I had lived as though my worth depended solely on what I could give to Claire. I had accepted being pushed to the edges of photos and memories. Conversations, along with ultimately her entire life, were being taken over. The pattern had become obvious. Claire would continue to take until there was nothing left of me, not my savings, not my home, not my sense of self-worth. For the very first time, I allowed myself to confront the question that had been growing in the background of my mind since the wedding. What would happen if I stopped giving? What would remain of our connection if I no longer provided financial assistance? Most terrifying of all, who would I be if I were no longer known just as Claire's endlessly giving mother? I rose and approached the suitcase, running my fingers across its worn surface. It had belonged to my husband once. One day, he had promised, I will show Claire the world. He never had the chance, but maybe there was still an opportunity for me to experience a bit of it. The real estate agent appeared surprised when I called. "You want to sell?" she asked. "But Mrs. Wilson, you have lived in this home for over 30 years. "Exactly," I responded, glancing around at the walls that held decades of memories. It was time for a change. In the fortnight since my last discussion with Claire, I had made more choices than in the past 5 years combined. The first was finally to accept Evelyn's ongoing invitation to join her book club. The second was reaching out to a financial advisor to evaluate my circumstances after the wedding costs. The third, and most important, was putting my house on the market. "I will need something smaller," I told the agent. "A place. That feels just right for me, only for me." Those words seemed strange on my lips, almost out of place, as if I were being selfish by thinking about my own needs. Everything happened quickly. The housing market was booming, and my carefully kept colonial home with its spacious yard attracted several bids within just days. I accepted an offer well above the asking amount with a flexible closing schedule that allowed me enough time to secure my next place. I had not informed Claire yet. Every time I reached for the phone, something held me back. Maybe it was remembering her casual demand for $40,000. Or perhaps it was knowing that she would judge this choice based on how it affected her, not as something I was entitled to decide. "You look different," Evelyn commented one evening as we sat on my porch after book club. The other women had already left, but she lingered, seeming to sense I needed someone to talk to. "Different how?" I asked. "Lighter," she replied. "Like you've put down a heavy burden you've been carrying for years." I smiled, realizing she was right. Each step I took toward independence was easing a weight off my shoulders. The constant anxiety over Claire's approval, the never-ending calculations of how to fund her ambitions. Slowly but surely, it was releasing its hold on me. "I found a condo," I told Evelyn, "near the lake. It has a small garden terrace and a view of the water." "It sounds wonderful," she said, then paused. "Have you told Claire?" I shook my head. "Not yet. She has not called since she requested money for a house. I believe she is waiting for me to reach out with a response. Ideally, a yes and a check. When she discovers that you are selling, the question lingered between us. We both understood the answer. She will be upset, I admitted, not because she wants me to keep the house, but because she has always believed it would belong to her one day. The weekend before I was supposed to sign the final documents, I decided it was time. Claire needed to learn about the sale directly from me, not through neighborhood rumors or seeing the sold sign in my yard. I called on Sunday morning, hoping to catch her before she and Justin left for their usual brunch with his parents. "Mom, is everything all right?" Claire sounded surprised to hear from me. She never called unless she wanted something, but apparently expected that I might do the same. "Everything is fine," I reassured her. "However, I wanted to inform you about a decision I have made. I am selling the house." Silence followed. "What? Why would you do that? It is too large, just for me. Too many rooms to clean, too much yard to maintain. All true, although not the entire reason. But she hesitated, and I could almost hear her calculating. Where will you go? I have purchased a condo near Lakeview Drive. It is lovely, Claire. You should visit sometime. Another pause, this one longer. But what about, we always talked about it. She could not even say it directly. The thing she had counted on. Inheriting this house had likely been something she already accepted, mentally spending the money it symbolized. Is this truly what is best for me right now? I asked softly but with clarity. Is it because I brought up the down payment on the house? Her voice shifted into that familiar wounded tone I recognized so well. Are you punishing me? She questioned. No, Claire, I answered. This has nothing to do with you at all. That is exactly the point. She demanded, what is that supposed to mean? The sadness in her voice gave way to a sharp indignation. I took a deep breath. It means I am making choices based on what I need, not what you expect. After all we have endured, you are just going to... I interrupted, surprising both of us. I paid for your wedding. I was left out of your photos. I had to wait in the kitchen. Then you called me asking for more money without even acknowledging how you treated me. That is unfair. She retorted. Those photos were Justin's parents' idea, and you agreed to it. I finished her thought for her. Just like you have agreed to push me further and further away from your life, except when you want financial support. My voice was steady, not blaming, only stating truths I had finally allowed myself to see. Silence fell on the other end of the line. For a moment, I wondered if she had disconnected. I need to go, she finally said, her voice tight. Justin is waiting. Oh, of course, I replied. But Claire, the house sale closes next month. If there are any childhood belongings you want, you should collect them soon. Fine, she answered, and then the call ended. I placed the phone down, expecting to feel remorse or sorrow. Instead, a surprising sense of relief washed over me. For the first time in many years, possibly decades, I had expressed my truth without filtering it through what Claire might want to hear. 3 days later, the doorbell rang. Looking through the peephole, I saw Claire and Justin standing on my porch. She appeared tense, her body stiff. He seemed uneasy, shifting his weight nervously. I opened the door, preparing myself. Without any introduction, Claire declared, I came for my things. I responded calmly, hello to you as well, stepping aside to let them enter. Justin at least had the decency to seem embarrassed. Hello, Mrs. Wilson. It's nice to see you again, he said quietly. Claire went straight to the attic stairs. I will need some help carrying a few boxes, she called over her shoulder to Justin, who followed without question. I stayed in the living room and listened to them rummaging above, occasionally catching Claire's sharp instructions or Justin's muffled responses. An hour later, they came down with several boxes. Justin loaded them into the car while Claire stood looking around the room as if it were entirely new, or perhaps the last time. So you are really going through with this? She asked, her tone softer but still sharp. Yes, I am, I replied. Her question exposed a lot about how she saw our relationship, me as the everlasting safety net. What happens if I need to return home someday? What if something goes wrong between Justin and me? The weight of these questions revealed her true feelings about our connection. You are not a fallback option or just someone to call when needed. You are an adult, Claire. If something happened, you would manage, just like I did when your father passed away. Her eyes grew a little wider. It dawned on me that maybe she had never truly considered how I was left alone at 35 with a small child and no forewarning. It's not the same, she insisted. No, I agreed, it isn't. You have a degree, a career, and seemingly very supportive in-laws. I had none of those things. Justin appeared in the doorway. That's the last of the boxes. Claire gave him a brief nod, then turned back to me. When you're older and need help, don't expect me to have space for you, she said with a cold and casual tone. I looked at my beautiful and accomplished daughter, the very person I had dedicated my whole life to, and felt a deep sorrow for what she had become, or maybe what I had let her become. "I never would," I answered quietly. My new condo felt like a refuge, light-filled and spacious, with big windows overlooking the lake. It was nothing like the dark colonial house I had lived in for 30 years. I had greatly reduced my belongings, keeping only what brought me happiness. My late husband's old record player, my favorite books, the quilt made by my grandmother. Everything else had been donated or sold. Letting go of each possession felt like moving one step closer to freedom. About 1 month into this new chapter, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. It was Evelyn. Usually people call ahead before visiting, and I had not made many other acquaintances yet in the building. Looking through the peephole, I was startled to see Claire and Robert accompanied by 2 individuals I recognized as his parents from the wedding pictures. I opened the door carefully. "Claire, this is unexpected. May we come inside?" she asked, her tone oddly formal. I stepped aside, noticing the uneasy looks on all 4 faces. Claire glanced around my new apartment with barely hidden contempt, while Justin's parents, Elizabeth and Richard, if my memory served me right, examined everything as if valuing property. "It is cozy," Claire remarked, with that word clearly masking the idea of small. "Thank you, I like it." I motioned toward the sofa and chairs. "Please have a seat. Can I offer anyone some tea?" "No need," Richard replied sharply. "This is not really a friendly visit." I raised my eyebrow, but took a seat opposite them. "Then, what has brought you all here?" Claire and Justin exchanged looks before she responded. "Mum, we have been discussing and are concerned about the choices you have made lately." "My choices? Like selling the family house?" I asked for clarification. "Moving here seems rash," she insisted. "It was not rash at all," I answered calmly, explaining I had pondered it thoroughly beforehand. Elizabeth leaned forward, hands perfectly manicured and folded in her lap. "Mrs. Wilson, what Claire means to express is that we are worried about your financial stability. Converting your most significant asset into cash at your current stage might be unwise." The concern was about my age again, as if being 68 meant I could not take care of my own matters. I acknowledged their worries, though inside I did not share them, and assured them that my finances were well managed. Richard's voice carried doubt because, according to Claire, I had spent a substantial amount on the wedding and then promptly sold my house. To him, that indicated financial trouble. I glanced at Claire, who slightly blushed but did not defend me. I firmly stated I was not facing any financial difficulties. I sold my home because it was too big for one person and required too much upkeep. I simply no longer wished to deal with it. Finally, Justin spoke up and made our concern clear. I was not growing any younger, Margaret, and eventually I would need support. Claire quickly added that we had found a solution. I waited, already guessing what they were about to propose. Claire explained that they wanted me to transfer my remaining assets to them. In exchange, they promised to care for me for the rest of my life. I looked at her in silence, unable to find words right away. Elizabeth jumped in, saying it was a smart plan. I would not need to stress about money or decisions related to healthcare. Claire and Justin would take care of everything. Richard then suggested I could move into their guest house once they found a suitable place, making it sound like a great offer. The 4 of them seemed very confident about the arrangement. They all looked at me with anticipation, as if waiting for me to gratefully accept their generous proposal to take charge of everything I owned. "Let me be clear," I said deliberately, making sure I fully grasped the situation. "You want me to hand over all my assets, my savings, investments, and this condo to Claire and Justin, and in return, I get to live in their yet-to-be-bought guest house and be looked after." "Exactly." Claire smiled, relieved that I appeared to comprehend. "It is the ideal solution." "And whose suggestion was this?" A brief moment of awkward silence followed. We all talked about it. Justin hesitated. "But who brought it up first?" I insisted. More uneasy glances were shared. I did, Claire finally admitted. But Mum, it is for your benefit. You have not been thinking clearly recently. I had to chuckle at the ridiculousness of it all. Not thinking clearly because I make choices you dislike. Because you consider my financial moves reckless. Richard interrupted. The sale of the house, the purchase of this condo. Ah, I nodded as understanding grew. And you worry that if I continue making these impulsive decisions, there will be nothing left for Claire to inherit. The shocked silence confirmed my suspicion. That is not fair, Claire argued, though her tone was weak. Is it? I looked straight at her. You were counting on my house. When I sold it, you were upset not due to concern for me, but because that asset was no longer available to you. And now you have come to secure whatever remains. Mrs. Wilson, Elizabeth began, her voice filled with condescension. Families look out for one another. Our goal is simply to protect the interests of everyone involved. Everyone's interests? I echoed. Or only Claire and Justin's? They are the same thing, Richard insisted. What benefits them benefits you. I rose abruptly, exhausted by the discussion. No, they are not the same. And I believe it is time for all of you to leave. Claire's face flushed with anger. So that is it. You will not even think about what is best for this family. This has never been about what is best for the family, I said softly. This is about what is best for me. For the first time in many years, I am making choices based on my own needs, not yours. And that frightens you. Mum, I have spent my whole life putting you first, Claire said. I worked 2 jobs to send you to private school. I delayed retirement to cover your university fees. I emptied my savings for your wedding, a wedding where I was hidden away in the kitchen because I did not fit the look. The words flowed calmly but firmly, not as accusations but as a reclaiming of my story. And now, just as I begin living for myself, you arrive with your in-laws to convince me I am incapable so you can manage my assets. I shook my head. No, not anymore. You are being unreasonable, Claire snapped, her concerned facade slipping to reveal entitlement underneath. Am I? Or am I finally being reasonable for the very first time? Richard stood, his expression icy. I realized this was a grave error. Come, Elizabeth. As they headed toward the door, Justin hesitated, his expression uneasy. Margaret, please reconsider our proposal. For Claire's sake, I looked him in the eyes firmly. That has always been my priority. Consider what Claire truly desires. But this time, I wasn't persuaded. Once they left, I remained by the window, observing them enter their luxury vehicle and drive off. I thought I would feel sorrow or remorse. Instead, an unexpected wave of relief washed over me, as if the last shackle binding me to my former life had snapped free. On the coffee table lay a brochure I had been too anxious to open earlier. It described European river voyages, specially designed for travelers alone. I picked it up, my choice already clear. A year later, I celebrated my 69th birthday on my condo's balcony, surrounded by genuine friends who appreciated me for who I was, not for what I could offer. Evelyn was present, naturally, along with 3 ladies from my book club, 2 neighbors from my building, and Thomas, the gentle widower I had met on my European river cruise half a year prior. Make a wish, Margaret, Evelyn encouraged as I prepared to blow out the candles on my cake. The cake was a delightful lemon treat from a nearby bakery, far from the extravagant designer cakes I used to demand. I closed my eyes briefly since I had little to wish for. For the first time in many decades, I was whole, comfortable with myself, living a life that belonged solely to me. As applause filled the air, Thomas caught my glance and smiled kindly. His eyes met mine from across the table and he smiled warmly. We were not rushing into anything. Both of us had carried too many years of experience to hurry love, yet his steady presence in my life was an unexpected blessing. A partner who truly saw me and valued what he noticed. Martha from the book club began her speech, raising her glass. I laughed softly, shaking my head. No speeches, just thank you all for being here. A year earlier, I could never have imagined this moment. It was true. 1 year ago, my identity had been defined solely by my role as Claire's mother. A role that had diminished me, even as I had been consumed by it. Now I was Margaret Wilson, an avid reader, passionate traveller, part-time volunteer at the local literacy centre, and a woman finally living her own story. The afternoon slipped by, with pleasant talk and laughter. As my guests started to leave, each hug was warm and full of promises to meet again soon. Thomas stayed behind to help with the cleanup. "You look happy," he said as we washed dishes alongside each other. "I am," I confessed, "happier than I've been in years." He asked about Claire. The question no longer stung as it might have before. Since our disagreement, Claire had tried different approaches. Anger first, then guilt, and finally a tearful appeal about family duty. When none of these succeeded, she simply stopped calling. The last news I had heard through mutual friends was that she and Justin had bought a house in an exclusive neighborhood. Our neighborhood received financial support from his parents. "I'm sorry," Justin said with genuine sympathy, despite never having met my daughter. "Thank you, but honestly, it's for the best." Our relationship had become, I searched for the right term, toxic, he finished for me. I agreed. Yes, and one-sided. I kept giving, but nothing was returned. Justin wiped the last plate and carefully placed it in the cabinet. Some relationships are like that, like trying to fill a bucket with a hole at the bottom. We stepped out onto the balcony, watching the sunset paint the lake with shades of gold and soft pink. In the peaceful quiet, I thought about the changes the previous year had brought. The trip to Europe I had always dreamed about, the watercolor classes I finally made time for, and the small but meaningful work I did at the literacy center, helping adults learn to read. My life had grown in ways I never imagined when all my attention was fixed solely on Claire's needs and desires. Suddenly, the doorbell rang, interrupting my thoughts. Justin raised an eyebrow. "Are you expecting someone else?" he asked. "No," I replied, puzzled. "Probably a neighbor." When I opened the door, I was face to face with Claire. She looked thinner than I remembered, her usually flawless appearance slightly undone, as if she had rushed out without much thought. "Mom," she said quietly. "Claire," I answered, surprised but calm. She glanced past me and noticed Justin standing on the balcony. "Oh, you have company," she said. "I can return," I said. "No, it is all right." I hesitated for a moment, then stepped aside. "Would you like to come inside?" She entered carefully, like someone visiting a distant land and unsure about the customs. I introduced her to Thomas, who politely excused himself after a few minutes, explaining he needed to get back to his dog. "He seems nice," Claire remarked after he left. "He is," I confirmed. "We met during my trip across Europe." "You traveled to Europe?" She sounded truly amazed. "Yes, 6 months ago on the Rhine River cruise. It was amazing." Claire glanced around the apartment, noticing the differences since her last visit. New artworks adorned the walls, and a bookshelf was filled with books I had finally found time to read. Pictures from my journeys were displayed proudly in place of family portraits that had once held that space. "You've been busy," she noted. "Indeed," I replied. A quiet pause settled between us. At last, Claire reached into her bag and drew out an envelope. "I came to give you this," she said, holding it out toward me. I accepted it, curious about its contents. Inside was a commercially bought birthday card with a standard message, but she had added a handwritten note. "Mom, I have been reflecting a lot lately. The past year has made me see things from a new perspective. Justin and I are no longer together. His parents decided I was not the right match after all. I realize I have treated you poorly. I do not expect you to forgive me, but I wanted to wish you a happy birthday and let you know I am trying to understand my mistakes." I looked up from the card and met Claire's eyes. I found her looking at me with a nervous expression. There was a vulnerability in her eyes I had not witnessed since she was a child. I said, "I'm sorry about Justin," genuinely meaning it. She shrugged, attempting to appear indifferent, but not quite succeeding. It turned out they only accepted me when they assumed I would come with a significant inheritance. When that did not happen, her words faded away. "That must have hurt," I said. Claire nodded, her usual composure faltering slightly. "The truth is, they treated me just as I treated you, as if my value depended solely on what I could offer." She looked straight at me. That made me realize who I had become. I motioned toward the sofa. "Would you like some tea or cake? It is lemon, your favorite when you were little." A spark of surprise flashed across her face that I had remembered this detail. "You still like lemon cake?" I replied simply, "Some things do not change." We sat drinking our tea and eating cake. The conversation was hesitant at first, but gradually it became more relaxed. Claire shared details about her divorce, her new apartment, and the therapy she had reluctantly begun. I told her about my cruise, my volunteer work, and new hobbies. There were awkward silences, moments when the weight of our past lingered between us. Yet, there was something else as well, a fragile honesty that had been absent for so many years. "I do not expect things to return to how they were," Claire said as she got ready to leave. "I know I have caused too much damage for that. Things cannot go back." I responded anyway, explaining that I was no longer the same person I had been a year ago. She nodded, acknowledging this fact. "Could I call sometimes? Would that be all right? Maybe we could meet for coffee now and then." I weighed her request carefully. The old Margaret would have eagerly agreed right away, desperate to restore any bond with her daughter. But I had come to understand the importance of boundaries and safeguarding the peace I had fought so hard to achieve. I said, "I would like that. Yet Claire, it has to be different this time, equal. I cannot go back to just being someone you rely on." Quietly, she replied, "I get it. That is not what I expect. I simply want to know who you have become." After she left, I went back out onto the balcony. I watched the last light disappear from the sky as stars emerged over the lake. I wasn't sure whether Claire's change was temporary or permanent, coming from true awareness or the shock of personally feeling the pain she had caused me. But one thing was clear. Whatever happens between us from now on, I will face it as the woman I have grown into. A woman who values herself enough to set limits and who knows her worth beyond what she can offer others. My phone buzzed with a message from Justin. "Hope everything went well. Still good for the gallery opening tomorrow?" I smiled, replying, "Yes, looking forward to it." In the balcony door's reflection, I caught sight of myself, standing tall and peaceful, eyes glowing with the light of self-discovery. Margaret Wilson was never just Claire's mother, not simply a source of money or a safety cushion. She was whole, a person in her own right. The unnoticed woman from the wedding kitchen had disappeared. Instead, someone new appeared. Someone who had finally taken her rightful place at life's table. Now, I want to know about you, the ones listening to my story. What would you do if you were standing in my shoes? Have you ever faced something alike? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Meanwhile, on the final screen, I'm leaving 2 other tales that are favorites on this channel and surely will catch you by surprise. Thank you for staying with me until the very end.